good afternoon and welcome back to the Analyst of Vajiram and Ravi. Today is 29th November and what are the important articles of the day? Let's have a look. In the first article, we will read about civil society organizations which hold immense potential in both aiding and obstructing the development process of India. In the second article, in light of a very positive news of all the tunnel workers successfully being rescued from the tunnel collapse of Uttarkashi, we will read about the rat hole mining process which has gave the final impetus to the rescue operations. And then we will read about a parliamentary standing committee, that is the Privileges Committee, and what functions it performs. And then I will take you through the Archaeological Survey of India, which is the premier agency responsible for carrying out the archaeological works in India and which has been frequently in news because of the Gyan Vapi mosque group. And in the last, finally, we will wind up the session by learning about some of the key climate change terminologies as COP28 is about to commence from tomorrow. So let's start the discussion. Our first topic is civil society organizations, a very crucial topic from GS2. Now, what is the context that with at least 38 families of Manipur who have refused to accept the government compensation of about 10,000 rupees that government was willing to pay the victims of ethnic violence in Manipur, they have refused to accept this compensation. And why? Because Supreme Court panel who was set to examine this issue has blamed that it was the role of civil societies organization functioning in Manipur who have caused the obstruction and interference in the process. This is very, very important because in GS2 there is a part where we have to read about the developmental process. What are the factors that aids the development process and what are the factors that leads to its obstruction? Civil society organization hence becomes very important topic of the day. Now, the first question that should come to your mind is, what are the civil society organizations? I have heard about NGOs, I have heard about pressure group, trusts, etc. But what exactly are civil society organizations? Are they NGOs only? No. Civil society organization is a much broader concept, which is basically an all-encompassing organization or all those organization associations which are not a part of state or market are known as civil society organizations. So it could include your NGOs, it could include the pressure groups, it could include self-help groups, it can also include trusts, charities, etc. So all the organizations that are non-state and non-market in nature, all of them come into civil society organizations. Now, as we can see, that they are not really influenced by market and state. They are that sector of society, the third sector of the society, which are away from market and state, but they actually influences both state and market in both positive and negative manner. So that is why it is very essential to manage the civil society organizations of the country, because from being the third sector of the society, they, if mismanaged, can get converted into the fourth frontier of war. So these are definitely important agents of growth and development. And this concept of civil society organization, this word was first introduced by a German philosopher named Hegel. Now, civil society organization, if you're still not getting the correct idea of it, let me tell an anecdote, let me tell with an example. So, for example, you have a neighborhood where a park is being there and the park needs some maintenance, and this park has been avoided by both the market functionaries and by the state functionaries. So, an excited group of volunteers come in front among the residents of the colony and they start a civil society organization. They pool in their fund and resources and they organize some cleanup meetings regularly so that they can clean up the areas or the park themselves. So this is one classical example of CSO where they are taking nothing from the state and they are taking no help from the market. They are working independently, and that is the beauty of civil society organization, that it harnesses the social capital or the energy of the social or the society to work together for a common goal. That is the idea of civil society organization. Now, once we have understood it, now let's talk about some of the examples. So, any NGO, for example, Greenpeace, Amnesty International, or Indian ones like Narmada Bachao Andolan, trusts or charities like Amul, etc., cooperatives like those, self-help groups like Kudumbashi of Kerala, Jivek of Bihar, all of them are nothing but the example of civil society organization only. Now, let's talk about how did these civil society organization evolved. So, The phenomena actually internationally took place since 1980s, when it was first flagged by the political scientists that the states or the institutions are seeing representation problem. They are not very representative in nature, and in spite of being a lot of efforts by the citizenry to have more representation, they were not included. So therefore now citizenry starts adopting a new approach, that is to form citizen groups, so that they can harness their social energy in order to gain their respective demands or their respective benefits or come to a common goal. So all of this started internationally in 1980s, but India was a pioneer, took a lead in this regard. The first scratches of civil society organization, first samples were seen in the British India back in 18th century when the social reform movement was going on. This was going on, and the leaders decided to pull in the social energy of the people who are aggrieved by the British government and started to form civil society organizations. For example, the Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, they are nothing but the examples of civil society organization only. So in India, we have been seeing such CSOs much back from 18th century only. Then they were also given legal protection, or they were also given legal status from the Societies Registration Act of 1860. As you can see, this is also a British India legislation. So they provided the legal status to societies. Even till date, all the trust, charity, society, etc. are registered under the Societies Registration Act only, except for there is a different legislation for the trusts. We'll see that later. Now coming to the post-independence India. So post-independence India and the government therein realizes the immense benefits lying in the civil society organization and their immense potential. So therefore, for the first time, government starts supporting and helping the civil society organizations. And this was seen for the first time in 1953 when a Central Social Welfare Board was formed, which for the first time provided government support for the establishment of NGOs in India. NGO, as I have told you, is one among the civil society organizations. Now the next effort comes via decentralization when the Panchayati Raj institutions got implemented in India. So this penetrated democratic governance in the deeper roots, further down to the people. So because developmental autonomy is getting trickled down to people, they are becoming more powerful. They'll start organizing themselves into cooperatives, trusts. So as a result, a lot of rural societies, rural cooperatives related to agriculture started springing or started mushrooming since 1958. Now entering of the international NGOs in the Indian domain. So it all started in year 1965. So 1965 to 1967 were those horrendous years when India was struck by a lot of drought and a huge form of drought and famines. Now, in order to provide relief against this, some international NGOs started coming in India, and later they established their permanent settlement in here. And also as a result, because they were having foreign jurisdiction, they were international NGOs, they started attracting foreign funds. And now starts coming of the foreign funds to the NGOs or the civil society organizations of India. Next is the post-1970s. So 1970s was a very brutal year for the governance of India. It saw internal emergency in year 1975. So which led to degradation of the people's trust over the governance and the governance institutions. So people started forming more pressure groups, more NGOs, more CSOs, and they started taking governance very, very seriously. They started taking governance in their hand. And here we started seeing the implementation of the Right to Information Act and the Lokpal Act, which were aided and enabled by the civil society organizations only. And they eventually led to development of more civil society organizations in India. So this was the overall evolution of civil society organizations. Now, why are they so crucial? Why are they considered as the developmental partners of India? Because of their crucial roles in democracy and economy. So as I have told you that civil society organization, the third sector, influences both the state and the market. Let's see how. First of all, it performs transparency and accountability matrix such that it acts as the watchdog of the state and the market pillars. It looks upon accountability, transparency, and whether they are working in accordance or not. And the second is they give a lot of expertise because some of them are research institutions, some of them have got scholars in them. Therefore, they immensely produce a lot of surveys and researches. They are very much equipped, and in fact, they have been very successful in local governance as well. For example, the Kudumbashi NGO of Kerala is not only successful in providing microfinance to the women, but also education to the women and also skill development and training to the women. Similarly, for the case of Jivika of Bihar. So they are also having a lot of expertise in performing successful governance at local levels. So we can harness that idea, that teaching from them and apply it on national level. Next role is of capacity builders because they provide skill development. They provide capacity building for the policy makers by providing them correct solutions and identifying the adequate problems that are going in the governance sector. Then they also become the voice of the voiceless because these are the platforms, the arenas of representation. They also give voice to the marginalized people and the people who are underrepresented in the population. Now, what are the challenges with the civil society organization such that it turns from third sector to the fourth frontier of war as highlighted by our National Security Advisor Ajit Doval? So he has said that this has now increasingly becoming the fourth generational warfare. The third generation warfare, which includes most of the modern technologies, the greatest of arms and ammunitions, they are also falling short in front of this fourth frontier of war. Why? Because first of all, it is inexpensive because it includes human. And second, here humans are very easily can be manipulated very easily. And second, the manipulated or the polarized people will further cause social mobilization of the same thought. This will change the narrative of the society, especially against the government. So the narrative will also get changed. So therefore, any kind of influence on the fourth generation or on the civil society organization will likely reap much grave implications as compared to those implied on the rest three parts of or the rest three generation of warfare. So the idea is that because people are very vulnerable to different propaganda's ideas, especially for those people who are feeling deprived. They can be very easily subverted, they can be divided, they can be manipulated to hurt the interest of the nation. So therefore, they can also, a manipulated CSO can also become a threat to the sovereignty and security of the nation. Now let's come to the economic challenges that it brings for India. It also hampers the economic integrity of the India. Why? Because it has been alleged by the IB that some of the international NGOs, for example, Greenpeace and Amnesty International, who have recently been banned by the government, so they essentially, because they are funded by some foreign money, they perform the work of halting the development in India. For example, development of critical infrastructures, development of nuclear power plants, they start halting it in the name of preserving the environment. And this has been seen by government as a good obstruction on the economic growth and development of a developing country, a very prospective country like India. So much so that their obstruction overall causes a loss of 2 to 5% loss of the GDP. So this is their economic implications. Next, they also cause threat to the democracy or civil society. How? So what happens that if a civil society or multiple civil societies are existing in a place and the political organization and or the state is not able to absorb or is not able to adhere to their demands, then what happens? They do not get, and also if they are not having any proper democratic channel to vent out their frustration, they polarize themselves and organize themselves rather irrationally, and as a result they start following or forming group that goes and vents against the government itself. They try to dethrone the government, as seen in the case of Brazil, Poland and Uganda. So there it has been seen that the political or the state institutions, for example, the president of Brazil was overthrown by some aggressive civil society organizations. And similarly, it was seen in Uganda. Similarly, it is also seen in some of the states of India. So such is their impact. They also threaten the democracy. They can also lead to establishment of an authoritarian regime. Next is the interface gap that civil society organization faces when it comes to their interaction with the government. So government itself is not very good sometimes. So government treats CSO rather badly. They don't appreciate their expertise, and due to the bureaucratic delays, the bureaucratic inertia. These are some of the reasons why the recommendations that should be taken from the CSOs and implemented in the policy are not done in accordance with what CSO have told. So this also frustrates a lot of civil society organizations because they see that the development and their voices are not mattering. Next is the over-regulation of the CSOs by the government. So government has their own vehementions, they have got their own apprehensions with regards to CSO that they might be politically funded or they might be internationally funded. But at the same time, when they are over-regulated by the government, it further frustrates them. So over-regulations in the terms of the new guidelines that the FCRA has brought, the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act. So the recent guidelines have reduced the amount of foreign fund allowed for a CSO from 50% to a drastic reduction of 20%. And these kind of over-regulations are again seen a breach on their autonomy, a threat on their autonomy. So they become more aggressive. These are some challenges of civil society organization. Now, we cannot end any topic without concluding something about strengthening of the organization, especially a very important, crucial organization like the civil societies. So, how to strengthen them? So, strengthen them, first of all, we should try to enforce or we should try to grant them some rights so they feel empowered. But at the same time, ensuring some of the restrictions so they do not contradict with the sovereignty or they do not harm the sovereignty and integrity of the nation. Now, while we need to provide some of the enabling provisions for them so that capacity building can be done, financial mobilization can be done, but at the same time we need to make sure that there are certain limitations imposed on them so they do not mushroom aggressively. So what are the strengthening measures? Some of them taken by government. For example, some policy measures like the National Policy of Voluntary Sector of 2007, which has realized that government eventually has to support or handhold the civil society organization in order to make them their developmental partners. So it provides some of the enabling provisions like providing them resources and like mobilization their financial resources. Second, by providing them channels to contact with the government in order to and also to use some of the transparent mechanisms that are installed by the government in order to further up the governance. So they are also roped into those communication channels. So these are some of the policy measures taken by the government of India. The second is to seek redressal against the false claims by the government. This is in line, and this is one case study is the USA example where it has imposed the False Claims Act, according to which any false claim by the government against which you can seek redressal. So similarly, this is done in order to provide protection because according to the words of Hobbes and Locke, both have agreed to one fact that civil society organizations can only be enabled, can only be strengthened once they are provided the protection of government. Without the help and aid of government, it is not possible. So therefore, giving them certain rights, protection is very important from the side of government. Next is to provide them accreditation and certification in case they want to seek financial resources or financial help from the government. And this has been recommended by the 9th report of 2nd ARC. Next are some of the regulations that are imposed on them. For example, the NGOs have got certain restrictions, certain regulations. They must be registered under Society Registration Act of 1890 and the Income Tax Act of 1961. The trusts must be registered under the Trust Act of 1976. But what about the other types of civil society organization, for example, charities, etc.? We do not have any regulatory framework in place yet. So that is again something we need to take care of. We need to enhance overall regulations across CSOs. Next is we need to encourage the credibility of the government and of the CSOs so that both of them have mutual trust on each other and they come together to harness energies and in order to provide better governance and economic development of the nation. Next, a limited CSO advocacy is also the need of the hour so that they do not resort to aggressive means that is out of constitutional regards. They do not organize against the state or promote anything which is for facilitating the disenchantment against the state, or also engaging in the political parties because they primarily need to be neutral. They need to be non-state, non-market actors for them to act in the best way possible. And last but not the least, government needs to explore the immense role that the civil society organization, by roping in their expertise and trying to apply it on the national level, so that final Atmanirbhar Bharat can be achieved. So upon this discussion, you must have realized one thing, that civil society organizations have become a very important, a very critical pillar for the development in India. So the three critical pillars that we have are the Samaj, the Sarkar, that is the state, and the Bazaar, that is the market. And in order to realize an Atmanirbhar Bharat, what is the need? The need is to harness their mutual energy so that we can facilitate sustainable development, inclusive development, and rapid economic growth of a country like India. Coming to the next topic, this is rat hole mining. Why this is in news? Because the Uttarakhand tunnel rescue operations have been successfully completed. All the 14 workers have been successfully rescued. And more about Uttarkashi, or the Uttarkashi tunnel collapse, you can read about in the 21st November Analyst, where it was the first topic, if you want to learn about the background. But nevertheless, to tell you in brief, a tunnel collapse, an under construction tunnel collapse happened in the Uttarkashi district. So what happened? A tunnel that was being constructed between Silkiara district and the Barkot district, a small part of it where the roof collapsed. Therefore, about 41 workers were stuck here for about 17 days. And they have all been successfully rescued now. The rescue operations went on and more than 12 agencies were involved into this. But the last removal of the roadblock was done by the rat hole miners, and therefore we are reading about it. So what is the rat hole mining process? This is important not only from GS3 point of view, because we are reading about disaster management, but also from the resource extraction point of view, where which is in the part of GS1, that is minerals and energy resources, and also GS3, environment, pollution and degradation. So basically it is an all-encompassing topic. So first of all, what is a rat hole mining? Rat hole mining essentially is digging of very small holes or pits that are roughly about 3 to 4 feet of height. That is half of our heights, half of human height. And it is good enough for only one human to go down and crawl upon it. So these are very, as you can see from this image, this is a very small rat hole. It also employs a lot of children because of their sizes. So such rat holes are created in order to extract the resources. The major resource that is extracted using this process is the coal, and especially the coals of Meghalaya. So in India, rat hole mining is very prevalent in the Meghalaya state. What about the Meghalaya state that makes the rat hole mining very prevalent in this region? So the first reason is the quality of the coal present in Meghalaya. So the quality is a tertiary coal which is of sub-bituminous type. This is not a very good quality coal, and the worst thing about it is that it has very high sulfur content. Then the second thing is the pattern in which these coals are available are coal seams which are very narrow, only about 2 meters in diameter. Very narrow coal seams are available. You can see from here, these are the seams and they are very narrow. Therefore, the traditional open cast mining that is done in the other parts of coal reserves is not possible in the case of Meghalaya if you want to extract the coal resources. So therefore, the Meghalaya people perform the manual extraction of coal by using a bamboo ladder or a rope through which a person enters inside this coal mine and then starts digging using mechanical instruments like axes or shovels. So this is about the rat hole mining. I hope you've understood this. Now there are two types of rat hole minings that are performed. First is the side cutting method. Side cutting, you move horizontally into cutting it till you get the seams of the coal, and these seams, for example the one that you are seeing in red color, then they are extracted using mechanical or extraction methods. So these are the narrow tunnels that are dug in the hill slopes. So along the hill slopes they are dug. That you have to remember. The worker goes inside the hole to find the coal seam and then start digging it. Next is the box cutting method. This is a vertical type of cutting. This one was horizontal. This is a vertical type of cutting where rectangular opening, as you can see, is made. And then vertically, the worker goes inside with the help of a rope and starts finding the coal seams and then starts digging. Naturally, you can see that this is very dangerous for the life of the worker, and it is also dangerous from environmental point of view. So what are the impacts of rat hole mining? First and foremost is one good implication or one good impact. That is, it provides employment opportunity to the people and the workers of Meghalaya, because Meghalaya, even though has got a lower quality, lower grade of coal, but it is prevalent across a lot across the Jaintia Hill. So if suppose this is Meghalaya, there is Garo Hill, Khasi Hill and Jaintia Hill. So in the Jaintia Hill, a lot of coal formation, tertiary coal formation can be seen. So this forms one of the largest source of employment for the local people. So it definitely provides employment, that's a good thing. But the bad thing about it is that it pollutes the ecology. It pollutes because, as I've told you, this coal is high in sulfur content. The moment the sulfur content gets mixed with water, and why is it getting mixed with water? Because this is a hilly region. You don't have many open spaces. Because you don't have open spaces, where will you accumulate your collected coal? You will accumulate it either near the river or either on the land in the form of landfills. So it is going to contaminate the water, it is going to contaminate the land. The sulfur content will leach out, it will mix with the water and form the very corrosive sulfuric acid. This sulfuric acid will not only damage the aquatic life, but it will also damage any infrastructure project that is in the or laid down in the river. For example, any kind of hydropower plant or any kind of dam, that will also get corroded because of the sulfuric acid. The next reason, the next manner in which it pollutes ecology is seen in the form of a case study actually. The pollution of Kopili River that flows from Meghalaya to Assam. So it was found that it was very high in sulfur content and very low in biological oxygen demand, and a PIL was filed in the court in order to seek redressal against this pollution coming from this practice of rat hole mining. So first of all is it pollutes the ecology. Second is it also has or poses good risk to the life of the workers, because see, first of all, they have to dig inside very unbearable conditions, a very suffocating hole without any light, without any food resources, and worst happens when the rain comes. The rain comes, seeps in the water, and as a result it chokes these tunnels. So they get stuck. They can die out of lack of oxygen, which is also known as asphyxia, or can die out of hunger also. So there is huge risk to the life of the people who are working, and not only that, because they are exposed to coal for a long period of time in a very suffocating atmosphere, they can also generate many pulmonary diseases, for example TB. They can also generate many cancers. So these are the impacts of rat hole mining. So what has the government done? Government first of all has got no policies yet. Yes, there was a draft policy incorporated in or drafted in 2012, but it has not seen the light of the day yet. So right now in India, we do not have any policy governing the rat hole mining in both central level and state level. But Supreme Court has exercised their judicial activism by banning the rat hole mining process in Meghalaya. So NGT, upon getting the PIL from the Assam Student Union, who have reported about the polluting Kopili River, so in accordance with that PIL, NGT banned in 2014 this process of rat hole mining. Then, in order to appeal against this, the state government passed a resolution that the Meghalaya state government passed a resolution that we want to further up the rat hole mining because it is providing employment to a lot many people. We don't want to hurt the economy. But then again, that state resolution was struck down and this ban was retained. So the final conclusion is that in India, currently rat hole mining process is completely banned. Now, Meghalaya High Court appointed the BP Kataki Committee, that despite the ban that is there, the illegal mining still continues in India. So while we know that illegal mining of coal in the form of rat hole is still taking place, What can we do about it? What are the concluding remarks? First is we need certain policy solutions. The pending draft needs to see the light of the day. It needs to be converted into an effective policy that is creating a balance. See, we cannot put blanket ban on one of the most important sources of revenue generation of a state, employment generation of a state. Blanket ban is not the solution. We need a middle path, we need a madhyam mark, and that madhyam mark has to be spotted using some policy solutions. So that we need to balance, so that we balance environmental conservation along with protection of livelihood of the people. Second is to implement sustainable mining practices. So even if you're mining using this process, the rehabilitation of the area so that it is decontaminated. For example, using methods like bioremediation can be adapted. Also performing waste management that is coming out so that the landfills do not get generated. It doesn't lead to contamination of land and soil and air. Next, we need to use certain technological interventions which can replace the human in the process. For example, why can't we deploy a bot? Why can't we use mini small UAVs, unmanned air vehicles, instead of deploying humans and risking their lives? Next is to generate alternative livelihood for the workers so that the problem of them leaving or compromising with their livelihood because of the loss of rat hole mining job doesn't prevails in the state. So alternative livelihood should also be provided. They should be employed either in industrial activities or in cottage industries. And last but not the least, we need to find certain solutions which can form a better alternative to the rat hole mining, and this is not a one-day job. This needs thorough research and development. So what do we need to do? Especially the state of Meghalaya and the central government, they need to put in more funds so as to augment the research and development to find the alternatives. This was about rat hole mining. Coming to the third topic, this is about privileges panel or privileges committee. Why this is in news? Because Rajya Sabha privileges panel has recently called MPs Sanjay Singh and Raghav Chadha and Derek O'Brien to present their defense against their breach complaints. This is important from GS2 point of view. So before beginning with the topic, first of all, what is a privileges committee? So first of all, it is a part of parliamentary committees. Parliamentary committees are the eyes, ears and hand of the parliament, which are a set, or basically they are a panel or a specialized panel comprising of selected member of parliaments which come together to perform certain activities. They perform oversight of the operations and functions of the parliament. They also perform investigations into certain issues and also scrutinize the issues. So this is what a parliamentary committee does. Now this parliamentary committee is divided into standing committees, standing parliamentary committee and the ad hoc committee. Standing committees are those which works on or which is appointed on periodic basis. Why? Because they have to work continuously. While ad hoc committees are those which work only on need to need basis. For example, the Lokpal ad hoc committee. From standing committee, we have examples like the public accounts committee, the estimates committee. We have also got ethics committee. We have also got privileges committee. So all of these are functioning for an eternal period. Therefore, they are the standing committees of the parliament. So our privileges committee is one among the standing committee of the parliament which is present in both the houses, that is in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. It is of semi-judicial nature because it also has the powers to conduct inquiry against the people upon whom the allegations of privileges have been imposed. They also recommend the actions that needs to be taken, but they cannot penalize them by their own. That is one limitation. Now let's talk about the composition. This is very important from prelims point of view. A straightaway question can be asked that Lok Sabha committee has got how many members? Lok Sabha privileges committee has got 15 members and 5 less are present in Rajya Sabha. Who is the headman? Who chairs these privileges committee? In the case of Lok Sabha, it is the Speaker of the House. And in the case of Rajya Sabha, mind you, this is not the Speaker but the Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. What are the conditions of admissibility of a complaint on the breach of privileges? This is, first of all, it requires consent of the chairman of the respective house. Without his consent, you are not able to go or start the process. Second is, the issue of privilege should be a matter of recent occurrence. Next, so for example, Sanjay Singh has been alleged because he has been talking about the Manipur issue. So this issue has been in news of late. This is a issue of recurrent or recent occurrence. So therefore, it was included. Next, matter requires the intervention of the council. It has to be established that council intervention is a must. Otherwise, we will not utilize or we will not admit such breaches complaint in order to waste the time of the precious time of the parliament. Now, what are the parliamentary privileges which this committee is trying to safeguard? So, every member of parliament is given certain rights and immunities that are enjoyed not just by the MPs but also by the committees and also by the parliament as a collective house. The enabling provisions are Article 105, which enlists the rights of the parliament or the parliamentarians, which are known as parliamentary privileges, and the right of the parliament to protect for these privileges or to protect these privileges is given under Article 194. So these are the constitutional enablers. Now let's quickly talk about the type of privileges. One that is taken or that is given to the entire parliament, that is a collective privilege, and one that is given to individual MPs is known as individual privilege. Now first of all, collective privilege. First is to publish reports or debates or proceedings and to prevent from their publishing. This is in the hand of the collective privilege of parliament. Next, to make rule to govern its own procedures. Next, to write to immediate notification of a member's arrest or custody, conviction or imprison. Next, courts are not allowed to investigate a house or its committee's privilege. So there is complete neutrality maintained and courts are not at all allowed to look into the matters of parliamentary privileges breach case. Now without the consent of the presiding officer, no person can be arrested, and not only that, any legal process can also not be started against it without the permission of the presiding officer. This is also one among the collective privileges. Distinguishing factor between or a difference between collective and individual privileges can be asked in exam, so therefore kindly pay attention to it. Now let's talk about the individual privileges. First, during the session, 40-40 day rule is there, which means that no member should be arrested in the case of civil matters 40 days prior to the commencement and 40 days after the ending of the session of parliament. Next, members have the right to free expression. He is not accountable for anything that he has said and he is not accountable particularly to the court. Then the members have the right to decline to give evidence against them or to testify in the court during this 40-40 period. This was about the Privileges Committee. Next is the Archaeological Survey of India. This is very simple topic. Actually, it is factual in nature. So we will take a questionnaire kind of format for teaching it. So what is the context here? That ASI has sought additional 3-week time to submit report on the court-ordered scientific survey of the Gyan Vapi Mosque. It is important from prelims point of view. So first of all, and the first question. What is archaeology? Archaeology is the study of the past using the remains. So who uses or who excavates and studies these remains? It is a dedicated body, which is the Archaeological Survey of India. So it is basically the watchdog for carrying out all the archaeological activities in India. But how did it evolve? How did these archaeological endeavors start in India? It all starts back in 1784 with the efforts of Sir William Jones, who founded the Asiatic Society in India. And thereby they started a group of people, not archaeologists, but they were the people who appreciated the antiques. So they were called the antiquarians. And these people started cherishing and started reviving the past of India. Therefore, they started performing not manual excavations or not scientific excavation, but they started exploring. The scripts, the manuals, the stupas, etc. Now comes 1834 and James Princip, why is James Princip famous? This is also a very important question because he was the first to decipher the Brahmi script. And he was also a member of the Asiatic Society. In fact, he was one among the secretaries of the Asiatic Society, founded by William Jones. Next, in 1848, Alexander Cunningham comes. He is the assistant of James Princeps. So you see, everything is following up. Everything is following in a chronology. So Alexander Cunningham, for the first time, gives out a plan in front of the then Governor General that we should have an archaeological department in place, but this plan failed. It was not accepted. But later on, in 1861, when Lord Canning comes, he establishes this particular plan, this archaeological plan, and he was made the first director of Archaeological Survey of India. And because of his initiatives, he is also known as the father of Indian archaeology. So who is the father of Indian archaeology? Alexander Cunningham. Now, finally, in 1904, an archaeological department was set in place, which means the archaeology was centralized. For the first time, a department is there in the central ministry. And this also promulgated the Ancient Monuments Preservation Act of 1904. Very, very famous, and this is during the time of Curzon. So you also need to remember the name of the Viceroy. Now, what are the roles and functions of Archaeological Survey of India? First of all, it performs researches. Not only that, it also protects the cultural heritage of India, not just in India. For example, protecting the Chenakeshwar temple, the temples of Vijayanagar, the temples of Hosalas. Not only that, but also temples abroad. For example, the Freem Vihars, Freem and Fro Vihars of Cambodia, and the Bamia Buddha of Afghanistan. These are also, although they are not under the jurisdiction of India, but they are also protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. So you must remember that it does not just protect the monuments of India, but also abroad. And why is it protecting the cultural heritage? Because it is under the Article 49 of the Indian Constitution, under a directive principle of state policy, which says that Indian government should make efforts in order to preserve the culture and heritage, especially of those monuments which are considered of national importance. So therefore comes the play of, or the role of, Archaeological Survey of India. And finally, it also maintains the existing monuments, and this it does by formulating or by creating particular circles. So there are about 30 circles in the India today, which is maintained by the Archaeological Survey of India, and it also regulates more than 3,600 monuments across the India that are considered of national importance. Now it regulates or administers, have got certain rules and regulations. For example, no construction can be done in 300 to 400 meters of the monument of national importance. So this is one of the rule, which means it has also got administrative powers with regards to monument, and these powers are given by these two acts, the Act of 1958 and the Act of 1972, which gives it power not only regarding the archaeological sites and the remains, but also regarding the antiquities. So this is about the Archaeological Survey of India, and yes, it is an attached office under the Ministry of Culture. Now, what are the other prime functions? That it is the custodian of all the centrally protected monuments of India. How many centrally protected monuments do we have? More than 3,600 in number. So this was about Archaeological Survey of India, the premier institute for archaeology. And last but not the least, a very interesting one, key climate change terminologies highlighted by this explained section of Indian Express. So why is this a news? Because the COP28, Conference of Parties number 28, is going to commence from tomorrow in Dubai. So now we are going to read about some key terminologies. First and foremost, what is the Conference of Party? As the name suggests, it is a conference. It is an annual meeting which takes place among all the party members which are signatory to the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, which was adopted in 1992 under the Rio Summit, and it was finally enforced in 1994. It has got a near universal membership of 197 member countries across the world, and it finally started commencing its first meeting, or the first COP, in 1995, with the first COP held in Berlin, Germany. The other important COPs are COP 3, which is the Kyoto Protocol, which is the Kyoto COP, that is in Japan. It was conducted in the year 1999. And why is it important? Because it gave us the financial mechanisms to mitigate the climate change in the form of clean development mechanisms, in the form of carbon credit mechanism, joint implementation and whatnot. So all of these were given by the Kyoto Protocol that was held in 1999. This was the COP3. Another important one is COP21. As we all know, Paris climate change. It was held in Paris, France. This is responsible for giving the ultimate target. It also replaced Kyoto Protocol, which had got its limitation, because there were certain limitations, and also it was operational only till 2020. So after 2020, which protocol is in place? The Paris Protocol, which says that we need to take certain measures which can help us to fulfill the aim of 1.5 degree limit. So before talking about this limit, let us also understand that Paris Agreement replaced the Kyoto Protocol. That's the first thing. And second, it does not have universal membership. It has got membership of all the countries except for Iran and Libya, and this question can be asked in prelims, so kindly make sure that you note it down. So what is 1.5 degree limit? So this degree is considered as the point of no return. So upon multiple researches and seeing the trend of climate change happening, it was observed that if we do not limit or contain our climate ambitions or contain the overall rise of the global temperature to less than 1.5 degrees or well below 2 degrees, then we will reach a point of no contact. That is, catastrophic events will start taking place. A positive feedback mechanism will develop where you will no longer be able to save the earth. Everything will start aggravating and things will destroy themselves. So this is to have the temperature limited well below 2 degrees before the pre-industrial levels. Not many of us know what are the pre-industrial levels. So this is the year of industrial revolution, that is 1750s. Now, what is the concept of net zero? Net zero is also known as the concept of achieving carbon neutrality. It doesn't mean that I am going to cut off my emission, but I am going to compensate for those emissions by creating carbon sinks, by creating forest, or by creating certain technologies that are helping to create carbon sinks. So this is the idea of net zero. And the IPCC, which is an NGO basically, which is created by World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Environment Program. IPCC gives a report named as the assessment report. So assessment report highlighted that 2050 is the final deadline for achieving net zero, because if we fail to achieve net zero across the world by 2050, we will not be able to fulfill our limit of, or our goal of 1.5 degree limitation of climate change. This is also known as carbon neutrality. The idea is to build up more carbon sinks, that is forest, and CDR technology. So the CAMPA fund that we have in India, the compensatory afforestation plan, is also a part of achieving carbon neutrality or net zero. So in the COP28, every country gave their net zero targets, and India in its Panchamrit concept, in its Panchamrit targets, have fixed that 2070 would be our year of achieving net zero. Next, nationally determined contributions. What are these? So in this very Paris Agreement, everybody has came together and agreed to a common goal. But how to achieve that common goal? We have to also set certain efforts in place. So that effort or that determined contribution will be different for each country. For Annex 1 country, Annex 2 country, Annex 3 country, that is the developed country, the transition economies, the developing country, the small island countries, for everyone it will be different. But yes, it will be fixed and it should be ambitious and it should be announced globally in the COP. So the nationally determined contribution, India also has it. We have been reading it throughout. So nationally determined contribution are the outlined efforts by individual countries. They are not similar, they are differentiated. And they have to be updated in every 5 years with a more ambitious NDC as compared to the previous one. And the last one, very interesting one, is the loss and damage mechanism, which means that due to the climate change, there are certain extreme weather events happening. For example, the heat waves, for example, desertification. It is not just causing degradation of environment, but also loss of livelihood. They're also causing social losses and economic losses to the people, especially to those countries which are least developed in nation, least developed countries, and also the small island nation countries, for example, Vanuatu. So these are suffering more. So they don't need to be just having or given different kind of responsibilities, but they also need to be given certain compensation. So compensation against their loss and their damage. This was first of all proclaimed in 2013 in the Warsaw. So this is also known as the Warsaw Loss and Damage Mechanism. So this fund was established in the last COP that held in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. So this fund for the first time was established in COP27. So these are the key climate change terminologies. This was all about today's session. Thank you so much and have a nice day.